Coming on in.
Welcome, everyone.
Good afternoon.
People are coming in to our first critical convo. So I just want to say welcome. If you can put in the chat, if you're an alum and maybe what year you graduated, or if you're a student, faculty, staff. If you don't want to share your year, I understand. Yes, a proud alum of 1988.
Yes.
Oh, no worries, Kristen. It'll be recorded. It's recorded, so you'll be able to have access just in case you missed anything. 2005, yes. 2023.
Okay.
Happening as soon as, look, before you know it, it'll be here. Great. So I don't want to keep us too much longer. I think we should just jump right in since we have most of our people here. So I want to welcome you all. My name is Krishna Williams. I am the Director of Alumni Relations and Development here at the school. And I want to welcome you to our, well, this is our second critical convo. It's a part of our homecoming series, Homecoming 2023, where we talk about the advocating for the profession and the professional. And so what a great way to talk about the profession and one of its aspects, and that is private practice. So I want to welcome everyone to our critical, I thought somebody was still coming in. And so I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Shantae Hatcher, who is our Assistant Dean for Continuing Education. So take it away, Shantae.
Thank you, Krishna. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I want to start off before we introduce our speakers for today. I just want to get a lay of the land and see who's in the room. And let's talk about practice. How long have you been in practice? You should see the poll. Oh, we came in hot with the 17 plus years. All right. We're edging out with novice, new social workers and experienced social workers. We're going to from 29% for the first to second year and 36% with 17 plus years. So we're gonna talk about how private practice shows up from the beginning all the way into, even if you're in practice now and you want to do more and grow your practice more. I also wanted to do one on if you're currently in private practice right now. Here we go. If you're, let me see if I can get it to launch. Put in the chat if you are currently in private practice. It won't let me launch it. For less than a year, thank you. All right, anyone else? None, okay. Oh, just started, congratulations, just starting this week.
Mm.
Not yet, yes. All right, so I think we're gonna have something for everyone. We'll have questions, and feel free to put your questions in the Q&A. And I will get to those too as as I ask questions. So let's start off with having our panelists introduce themselves. We have a great panelist. We have someone to talk about branding, folks that teach people how to do private practice, and then those that are in private practice right now. So let's start with Victoria Stubbs. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. So yes, I'm Victoria Stubbs. I'm the owner of Inner Truth Psychotherapy and Wellness, LLC, former instructor at the university. So it's nice to be back in the mix. But yeah, I've been a social worker for over 20 years, been in private practice for over 5. Started off part-time, went full-time a couple of years ago. So now I'm deep in business entrepreneurship. My focus is primarily individuals, women coming out later in life, and couples. I also do clinical supervision and professional consultation for pre-licensed social workers, and then those who've already gotten their license but still want the ongoing support. And then as an offshoot, which we'll probably talk about later, as far as scaling your business, I also offer Reiki services and mediumship sessions.
All right, thank you, thank you. Lynn, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name's Lynn Grodsky, and I'm a psychotherapist in solo private practice since 1988 in Silver Spring. And I'm also a business and executive coach, and I've been doing that for quite a long time too. And I'm on the faculty of a very large coaching university. I came from a background in business, and I wanted to be a psychotherapist, but I really missed business. So I started learning more about business and then started translating business for therapists. So I've written a number of books. One of them is Building Your Ideal Private Practice. That's in its 2nd edition, published by Norton. And in the last few years, I've tried to give back by participating with the NASW. I was vice president of the NASW Metro chapter for a few years, and just recently president of the Greater Washington Society of Clinical Social Work.
Thank you, Lynn. And Alyssa, tell us about yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alyssa Jones. I'm the owner of Alyssa Pena Design Studio, and we specialize in branding and marketing for mental health professionals. So I started my career working in the field of education, always had a passion for just making an impact, and this is how I'm able to further that through my marketing and branding work. Our work is centered around our Clarify, Create, Connect framework, which basically is a framework in which we empower our clients to get the clarity that they need in their business, right? To identify how they want to serve. And then we give them the tools and resources to create a sense of community with the work that they do.
Did you see that elevator speech? See, there's somebody you need to work with branding, real concise. Thank you. So my thought is we should start off with what happens. You just get your LCSWC and you just became clinical, and now all of a sudden you want to hang your shingle, you want to start a business. Maybe Victoria and Lynn, let's start with you to, once that ink dries, do you recommend a time frame to start a practice? Should you just jump right out there as soon as you see that pass on the screen?
I'll start. I think it really depends on how strongly you feel about start going into private practice. And I say that because as someone who does supervision, what I've found is that sometimes it's almost overwhelming to just jump out there just because you have the letters. And so it sort of depends, right? Like if you've been, working up to your C and maybe in a group practice or doing community mental health, oftentimes you get the exposure of what it feels like to not just be in private practice, but have the endurance to see multiple clients back to back every day. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that do you have the stamina to do this? Because you're also working by yourself. And so what I've seen is that for folks who have the C, they still want to be connected to either a supervisor, some consultation, other people, because you're working by yourself. And it's, like I said, it's the endurance, it's the, oh my goodness, am I actually doing this right? It's like you still sometimes have a lot of questions because you're getting your grounding. And so that's why I'm saying it really sort of depends on how comfortable you feel with going it alone. Do you have a support network that you can lean on for when you get stumped or doing the paperwork and all those types of things? Because you're not going to have a boss just in your ear saying, get your notes done, submit this, do that, do the other. So I would say it really depends on your readiness and your stamina. Because I've definitely seen some newer clinicians become overwhelmed and sort of step back in a pause because it was a bit more intense than they thought it was going to be.
Thank you. So definitely that stamina of having 7 clients, sometimes 7, 8 clients back to back.
Yeah.
How about you, Lynn?
Yeah, I love what you're saying, Victoria. I think that makes so much sense. And another thing that we need to think about is how ready you are to actually start a business. Because a lot of us feel like we are pretty well trained clinically to start out, but business might be brand new for us. So then you want to make sure that you've talked with somebody about what you need to set up your business, that you're feeling secure in that way. And I think that, most small businesses start up with some kind of a business loan, so you have a cushion. We're really an unusual small business in private practice as therapists, that most of us feel like we don't need to do that. We can just start. And you can, but you have to watch for the fact that your income may be slow to build. And so you want to make sure that you're not putting too much pressure on yourself, because your clients are your income. And you can't be grabbing too hard to your clients to stay in therapy just because you need them for income. So I really recommend, it's often best to start in a part-time way so that you have another source of income to buffer you, and you can kind of get comfortable with this in the ways that Victoria was talking about, getting used to supervising yourself, really, because even if you have supervision, it won't be for every session.
That's right.
Finding a way to work in isolation if you're working by yourself so that you're comfortable with that. And, a lot of things set up for people in private practice. Sometimes you feel like it's imposter syndrome. You're sitting there and you're kind of lost at what you're doing. And it's not like you're working in an agency. We can just go out in the hallway and grab somebody and say, can you help me with this? So it does develop over time that you get used to the rhythm and the requirements. But starting out, I would also, just like Victoria said, I'd want you to have support.
Yeah. And I really like the part-time aspect of it, because that's also what I did, because it also helps you not just with stamina, but it helps you to figure out what population do you really want to work with. Because when I initially started, I wasn't fully sure. And I was only seeing I was like, let me just see, just like what you just said, Chantal. I was like, let me just see a couple of clients to see how this feels, see how, how this goes. And then I stopped when I started teaching full time. But it took me a while during that pause that I took to be like, you know what, the population that I really want to serve, are, I narrowed it down, because you can't see everybody. And so the starting part-time helps you to get a feel for and get your head around, who do you really want to work with? What do you feel like you have either an expertise in or a growing expertise in, so that you're not, like Lynn said, not just taking on clients because you got to make money.
Yeah,
right?
I remember, Victoria, when I started, I was seeing children with learning disabilities, because I had a child with a learning disability, and I had gotten a lot of extra training beyond my MSW for that. And I had a supervisor, and it was hard for me. I got a lot of clients right away, but it was really hard. And one day I called her up. I was almost in tears. And I said, I don't know what to do with this family. And she said, well, come over and talk to me. And I did. And she said, you know, Lynn, if you're going to work with families, you've got to get extra training as a family therapist. And I thought that was not what I wanted to do originally. So I actually shut that practice down over the summertime when people left with attrition, and started up again in the fall with the way I'd really wanted to work. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because it does take a while to figure out what we're doing with this degree and what we want to do.
Yeah.
One of the things that I find is that sometimes when you're practicing or you're working for that seed, you might go to just take a job. One, you just need money once you graduate, and you just take a job, and then you work that job till you get your seed. And that might not even be in the area that you want to work in. And so just having that level of expertise and know that you have something to offer just outside of just saying that I do therapy.
Right.
One of the things that people say a lot is that I'm eclectic. And sometimes when I hear that, it kind of means that I do a lot, or I know a little bit about a lot, but don't have the expertise. And so, Alyssa, what do you say to people that they're jumping out there and they come to you and say, I need a website, and then you're trying to ask them questions and they're like, no, I see anybody. What do you say to them?
You all make a very great point about, that transition between part-time entrepreneurship and full-time entrepreneurship. So sometimes clients come to me, and when they're in the in-between stage and they are doing all the things, I say to them, maybe this isn't the time for you to make that investment, right? And some people are shocked by that because, they're thinking, oh, well, you own an agency, then you want to take clients, but I'm big on ensuring that you're making that investment at the right time. So what I would suggest is this: if you're new in your business and you're still trying to identify who do you want to serve and how you want to show up, then that's probably not the time to make a large investment in your branding. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't need a logo and those different elements that make you look, that position you best as a professional. But there are times where I think there's a lot of talk on social media about, investing in yourself. And while that is helpful, and I do believe in that, your investment should be in alignment with the stage that you are in business, right? So if you're in business for, let's say, 0 to 3 years, maybe you just have a simple landing page and just those foundational items, a logo. Brand strategy is most important. I think people go directly to the design elements and they don't think about that clarification process. So that's where we start. We're big on starting with the strategy, right? That lays the foundation for everything. Once we're able to identify who is your target audience, what are your core values, how do you want to serve, and then also ensuring that your branding and marketing are attracting the right people to you, so that you, to Victoria's point about that stamina, right? If you know, for example, that there's one population that you're great at serving, but you feel tired at the end of the day after interacting with them, then your marketing and your messaging, even though that may be making you money, should not be centered around that. You have to keep your lifestyle in alignment with your marketing and your branding, and not just, not just trying to generate revenue is basically what I'm trying to say. A lot of people come into it with, oh, I want to make X amount of dollars, or they want to be off every Thursday. And a lot of these weird things that we all do when we run a business, right? We leave corporate, or we leave a nonprofit, or we leave the education sector, and we say, okay, now I'm going to do it differently, but you can't change everything overnight. So I would just leave you all with saying that I would definitely encourage people to think about what stage are you in your business, and what investment is going to be in most alignment with that, and what exactly do you need, and not just trying to get all the things, because you should not be changing your branding every 3 years. And so many service providers in the mental health field, every 2 to 3 years, they're rebranding because they're just trying to find that groove.
Definitely. That is so true. The rebranding, and part of it is just, you just don't know. And so just seeing a couple of clients that get that groove makes sense. Victoria, you talked a little bit about being lonely or just entrepreneurship, just being lonely, but can you talk about the loneliness on just the business side? Like if you're taking insurance, just doing those notes or just not being able to come out and talk to coworkers, you are really in it by yourself?
Yeah, yeah, no, it's really a thing. And I was fortunate in that when I started my practice, I worked not so much with other therapists, but I just worked in a wellness center. So there were other people around. But I often have to phone a friend. And whether that's for accountability or whether that's just to process a traumatic session that I just had, I often have to phone my friends who are also therapists. And, we'll just talk on the phone or we'll just do chats. Particularly during quarantine when we were all just doing this all day, we had virtual like peer support sessions just to be able to connect with other people. And so it's really helpful to find that if you don't naturally have people that that are doing this, that maybe your friends or whatnot. There are a lot of coaches like Lynn, et cetera, out there who also can help you to find your tribe, whether it's through Facebook or Instagram or going to different functions and then meeting other people to stay in contact and just to know what other practitioners are doing. That was extremely helpful for me because to Lynn's point, I didn't know the business side of things. And so I knew just enough to get started. I had my tax ID number and, I went from there and had my business bank account. But the rest of it, because I was doing it part-time, I didn't really know about. And so once I started linking up with coaches and learning more about how to actually structure the business, I actually started meeting new people and now I have a larger network and I feel more supported, even in making the decision to get a virtual assistant, because I didn't have an assistant for the first few years. And so I was just like, oh my God, I'm trying to, manage my schedule, do paperwork, do this. I don't take insurance. And part of the reason why I don't take insurance is because I started part-time, I was working a full-time job. I was like, I don't have the time or the capacity to do that. But now that I have an assistant, I could, because she could handle that part. And so I think that's the other part of it too, is sort of once you get going, you realize you can't do all the business things and see clients and do, right? And so now that I have an assistant, like I have a small little team now, so I can even just email with her. We have monthly chats where we can just sort of talk about things. And so that just having a teammate also helps with me not feeling like I'm just in this by myself, because I'm emailing with her almost on a regular basis, just talking about scheduling and things like that. And so it's those little things I just didn't know at the beginning that I figured out along the way that really helps to me to not feel alone. And now in my office space, I share it with another therapist. And even though we're not always here at the same time, when we are, we're always like, oh my God, it's so nice to see you. You're doing your thing, I'm doing my thing. But, I'm in a space because I know telehealth is a big thing now where everybody just can work from home, which is great. And it also keeps you isolated. And so, it does help to have an office to go to where there's at least one other person to be able to sit and talk about the day.
So I had like 3 questions that came up. One, talking about the business, just getting the tax ID and all of the things. And I think Alyssa talked about the money too. But we know in social work field, we don't do it for the money. I don't know where that came from because I like to pay my bills on time. Okay. So how do we reconcile that ideal that we're not supposed to do it for the money, but yet we need
gotta eat. We gotta eat. We gotta eat. That's one of the things that I've had to work on as far as the money mindset and recognizing sort of like, okay, how to even figure out what your rate should be. And part of it, again, goes to sort of like what Alyssa was getting to, what's your lifestyle? Like, how many clients do you want to see every week? How many clients do you want to see a day? How much money do you actually need to make each month? Knowing that it's going to be variable, but how much money do you want to make each month in order to pay your bills, to be able to eat, to be able to live your life? And so that's the thing that we often don't think about, because we're just thinking, oh, I want to do this work, and we sort of romanticize it. But it's like, we have to pay rent on our office space. We have to pay for the software to see the clients using telehealth. And we have to pay for our CEUs, because once you're solo, there's no boss that's going to give you $1,200 to, you know what I mean? Like, so you got to factor in, even though it's a tax write-off, you still got to come up with that money up front. So how much money do you need to make comfortably in order to live? That you got to think about that, because then I tell my supervisees, and you got to eat and you got to pay your bills. So how much do you need?
Lynn, can you break some of those things down of like
Yeah.
the steps of what you need to think about?
Yeah, so the first thing that I would want you to think about is that as businesses go, a therapy private practice is an expensive business to operate. Okay. And what that means is that because our caseloads are limited by our own time and energy, and because it's hard to scale up to go from 0 to having 10 therapists working for you, our expenses usually run about 40 to 50% of the money that we bring in. So just sit with that for a moment and realize, if you were charging $100 for a session, probably $40 to $50 of that at the end of the year is money that you've paid out in your expenses. So because of that, just as thinking about this as a business and knowing that there's hidden expenses, there's things that you do that you will not get paid for. It's not like a lawyer that can pay for every 15 minutes that a lawyer is working. We've got auxiliary phone calls, we've got finding referrals, we've got extra training that we do and consultation and our treatment reports. You're not going to be paid for that. So that means you have to be really careful that what you charge makes sense, that it's going to take care of not just your personal needs, but your business needs, and that it's going to allow you to make a good profit. And we're making a profit not just because we're greedy, but in order to satisfy the IRS. If you have a business, it needs to be a business that shows a profit at the end of the year. So we're really balancing, or what I would call reconciling, this idea of service, giving good service, and also being good, like you could think of it as being good parents to your business, which is almost like a child in a way that you're sponsoring or you're mentoring, and making sure that that business, and you're one of the assets of the business, the primary asset, that you stay in really good shape. So we have to figure out, how does each person reconcile that service and profit? And there's not just one way, there's like many ways, but I would want you to do that for yourself so you feel really comfortable with all the things that Victoria said, all the ways that you decide to charge for a fee. And I think there's like good criteria and bad criteria in terms of how to set your fee or how to raise your fee. We could talk about that, but in general, you're doing this for a real important reason, that we need your business to stay strong.
So this makes me think of ethics. We're talking about money, and when you are in private practice and you now have this number that you know you need to hit to be able to pay your bills and keep your business going, and now you have a client that, one, either is really not a good fit for your practice, or two, probably is ready to terminate, to be discharged. And you know, you still need to see 40 in a week. I'll just say you need to see 40, but if you start to discharge these clients or start to refer them out because they don't fit your expertise, how do you reconcile that?
So I would say one word that you could think about to reconcile that, I know Alyssa could speak to this, is the idea of flow. Okay, that in every business, there's like an ebb and flow. And we want there to be enough of a flow of the right kinds of clients that are seeking you out so that you can let go easily and comfortably and safely when you have a client that needs to leave for any reason, I just want you to be able to let go and know that the next client is in your pipeline.
That's such a great point. And that brings me to this idea of, right, money mindset, money management, and messaging. Your messaging on your website, on your social media, on any of your marketing collateral can either bring the right people to you and turn the wrong people away, or vice versa. Sometimes when I visit people's website, because they work in the field of social work, it reads a lot. Basically, there's a tone that says, I'm just here to help you, right? The issue with that is way too general. So a lot of times people have a niche in their head, but it's not being communicated on their website. So I tell people, one of the ways that you can see this, especially for people that have had a private practice for some time, if you're booking consultations with clientele that cannot afford your services, that is a strong indicator that is something in misalignment in terms of your messaging. Or that could also be a strong indicator that you are just not pricing your sessions correctly, right? So even if you are getting the right clientele, but you're not pricing your sessions correctly, what's going to happen? They're going to refer you to other clients that are also going to want to pay you at a lower rate. And so sometimes, even with sliding scale, I tell clients, if you would like to put that on your website, it's not a problem, but just keep in mind that opens up the door for there to be a sliding scale, right? So sometimes people say, well, the majority of my clients are, higher up on that scale. But then I say, well, why not just make that your session price? If you know that's what you need to properly run your business, because again, this is a business. You are helping people through your business, but it is a business. And like you all said, you do have business expenses. Think about that. You may not want to do a sliding scale when you go full-time in a private practice. And if you do have to have that consistent flow of clientele to balance things out. You have to kind of find where your equilibrium is, so to speak.
Yeah, and if I could just piggyback on that, because I like what Lynn was saying also about the flow. It's also okay to say no. So to your point, Shantae, yes, there are clients, and I did this earlier this year, in checking in with clients who I had been with for a while. And this is the other thing too about working solo, like you have to be able to do your own assessment to know, like, okay, these clients, I've been working with them for a while, they've gone through their treatment plan. They could step down. Either they could step down to every other, or maybe they can terminate. And so in having that conversation, that meant, yes, some clients, I'm going to have some openings now, right? And so, yeah, knowing that there are other clients coming in, but also saying no. Like I have to track, because I do have a sliding scale. I will often keep a number of, okay, I had X number of spots for sliding scale folks that I can comfortably see. Any more than that is now dipping into the financial sort of comfort zone, right? And so I often will just say no. And me and my assistant will say, okay, if somebody requests a sliding scale, we just have to tell them we don't have any more spots. And then I just wait for the folks who come through who are able to pay the full rate. And so those are the types of things that when we talk about the mindset and the comfortability around money, that we have to get comfortable with, because we can easily just say, sure, I'll see you, sure, I'll see you, sure, I'll see you. And then we're not hitting our business goals that we need to hit. So we got to be comfortable saying no when we don't have the space. And the last thing I wanted to say, when you said 40 a week, if you're seeing 40 clients a week, you need a vacation immediately. Immediately, because the average number is usually it usually ranges 20 to 30 a week. And usually even with my colleagues who see 30 a week, even they are like, ooh, this is a lot. You know what I mean? And so the range is usually, on the high end, it's 30. The average is usually 25, I would say. Lynn, what do you see?
Yeah, it's hard to get statistics for our profession, but in general, we figure that somewhere between 25 to 32 is a full-time private practice. And I know there are therapists who do a lot more than 32, but they like it and they figured out a way to make it work for them, or they're running groups and that's a good way to leverage the practice. Yeah. So there are ways to do this, but it's important for each person to know what's your capacity.
Right. Especially if you're seeing a lot of clients who have intense trauma, for example, that's going to wear on you.
Yes.
I'm at a phase, to Alyssa's point, where I'm looking at going from one to many, in order to diversify. Like you said, how can I see more people, but not doing it in a one-on-one way, which can be really draining and financially limiting. And so, yeah, doing groups or other trainings and things like that can be another way to see more people, but the one-on-one can be extremely intense depending on what the issues are. So that's the other thing too. And if you're working with children or families, right? Like how much, to Lynn's point, for the supervisees that I work with who are working with children, there's often a lot of prep involved in getting your activities prepared or following up with the parent. That's not a billable hour necessarily. That's just follow up and preparation. And so you want to keep that in mind too when you're thinking about your time and how many clients you can see in a day or a week.
So Victoria, you said that you have a sliding scale and you have a limit, but and that's one way to do it, to kind of meet, in my mind, meet that standard around social justice, to like make sure that you're working within that standard. But I also wanted to bring up the ideal of insurance versus no insurance, and even reconciling that with this ideal of social justice. I know a lot of people don't want to do insurance because the paperwork is crazy. We know that. But if you're only taking private pay, are you really helping, helping the community? And then even what does that mean?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, you're absolutely right. And it took me a while to get clear because I was coming at it from a social justice perspective, which is why I was like, okay, if I'm not going to take insurance, I have to do something to make sure that I'm accessible. And so that's why I'm not opposed to insurance. I just didn't start there because I didn't have the ability to handle all the paperwork. I'm not opposed to it. This has worked for me, and I do have a steady flow. And with the types of clients that I work with, it works. I also there are foundations that offer scholarships for funding for therapy. And so because I work with a lot of queer people of color, there are foundations to make therapy accessible. And so I have several clients who will apply and get vouchers to pay for therapy. And so that's another resource that we use to help people to be able, because some clients are unemployed, so they don't even have insurance, or depending on the industry that they work in, they don't have insurance, or they have insurance, but it doesn't cover therapy. And so sometimes it is about finding other ways to help them help make the service accessible.
And if I may, I just want to give everybody a resource. If you are taking insurance, one of the writers about insurance that I like a lot is Barbara Griswold, who wrote a book called Navigating the Insurance Maze.
Yeah.
And she's got a website. She has really good tips about making insurance work for you. She talks about things like the need to streamline everything if you're doing insurance, and to really be good about your boundaries and your time. If you're taking insurance, you don't want sessions to run over. And maybe you want to write your notes during the sessions with the clients, so that just becomes part of how you do things together and how you measure success. And I didn't know this till I read her, but you can negotiate for a raise with the insurer, especially if you're in an area where there are not many people doing what you do for that clientele. So she has just a lot of, and she has really good language about how to negotiate. I'm going to put it in the chat, okay, so people can see it in the chat. I also want to say that there's pros and cons for insurance, and you don't have to take insurance if you don't want to, but there's some advantages of taking insurance or some insurance. And then there's also, if you don't want to, it just puts more responsibility on you, especially about marketing. And, Alyssa could probably speak to that, but you're going to be spending more time and maybe more investment doing your marketing that the insurance company would have been doing for you.
That's a great point. I also want to say, from a systems and operations perspective, your website can also be a resource for that. So if you know for your clients that you're going to be doing insurance with them, taking insurance for them, that you need a certain form filled out or and things of that nature, you can put different resources or a portal or, a page with different downloads and different forms to streamline that process, right? So that you can kind of automate some of those things. But to your point, it does also impact your marketing because, right, the insurance company is referring people to you and they're, giving you that leg up, so to speak. When you're working for yourself and you're not working with the insurance provider, you do have to show up on social media. You may have to invest in marketing and advertising. You do want to go out and network. Maybe you want to do a referral incentive for your current clients. You might want to get, creative with that. You may also want to be looking at different ways that you can provide resources, right? We are in a digital age. This is a great opportunity for mental health professionals to give, different resources online, whether that's workbooks or journals or affirmation cards, or just different things that their clientele can use outside of therapy to continue their, wellness practice. I think is also a great way for you to generate more income without necessarily spending more of your time. And your website, your marketing, your branding can support those efforts as well.
Ooh, you talking about that residual income where you're not working so hard for it. So yes, writing a book, coming up with some cards, t-shirts, something so that that money comes in on a regular is helpful. So we have some questions from the audience. One is, you are all doing awesome job. See, that's a social worker, As we know, being a business owner can be tough and involves a lot of work. Being on the other side of it and finally starting a business, what makes it worth it?
Ooh. Time, freedom. But for me, for sure, it's definitely, I often reflect on this because I'm still, early enough in it. I reflect on just the flexibility that I have with my time. And that is just priceless for me, being able to, in the middle of the day, and the story that I tell some of my clients sometimes when I'm talking about self-care. Last summer, when there was those mass shootings that were happening like back to back, and it was just a lot going on. And then clients were coming in talking about the stuff that was going on. In the middle of the day, I had a break. I went and picked strawberries because I was like, I need to be out in nature to calm myself down. I wouldn't necessarily have been able to do that if I wasn't my own boss. And so just being able to have the flexibility to structure my life the way that works for me is everything.
The other thing I might want to say is we're a profession that's primarily woman-owned at this point. I think I think their statistics say in terms of those in private practice, it's like 90% women, and minority women are really strong in entrepreneurship and are like responsible for something like 29% of all small businesses in the United States. Mm-hmm. So we come to this with a lot of skills, even if you haven't done it before. Women are great business owners. And I really feel like the empowerment that it gives you, and as Victoria said, the control, also the clinical control where you can decide best with your client what the right treatment plan is, and that you could earn a six-figure income. Yeah. Which is really important, I think, for a lot of us, is to feel like there are a lot of us that are supporting our families. And I certainly, for myself, I was a single parent and I was supporting my family all the way through my career. So I needed to earn enough money. And that's what allowed me to do it, was having control over my own business. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I agree. For me, it's the opportunity to operate in your zone of purpose, right? So, I know my niche is working with the mental health professionals. That's where, I make the most impact, right? So I'm able to do that consistently. And then to you all's point, I also have that flexibility, right? So just being transparent, I just had my daughter 9 months ago. So she just turned 9 months. And as you can imagine, because I'm a business owner, I'm able to still operate my business and also be present with her in a way that feels good for me, right? So having that flexibility and just being able to listen to your body, like you said, go and pick strawberries in the middle of the day. If you work in corporate, you're not going to be able to do that. So it's just nice to have that sense of flexibility and just know that you're right in alignment with your purpose and not doing things that don't feel fulfilling to you.
Yes, yes.
See, that's a zone of purpose. I've heard a zone of genius, but I don't think I've ever heard someone say zone of purpose. I like that.
Yeah.
I think we talked about this one a little bit, but what are the challenges of incorporating or accepting private insurance? Does anyone want to say a little bit more about that?
What makes it difficult when you do that to accept
Yeah.
private insurance?
Yes.
If you are working, if you're a contractor for an insurance company, then the fees are set by the insurer. You must follow that contract. And there have been a lot of terrible cases of social workers being sued by insurers for not following the contract. So you have to make sure that everything that the insurer says, you are following that. Oftentimes to bill, you're going to need outside billing help anyway to get paid, because insurance companies are notoriously at times slow with delays in payment. So there are a lot of frustrations. And if you're on any one of these listservs or chat boards, you can hear the frustrations with working for an insurance company. So one thing that you could think about doing, even if you're working with insurance, rather than take every insurance, is you could think about, like Victoria said, partial insurance. And if you are on a lot of insurance companies right now and you're wanting to leave some insurance companies, the way I usually help people do this is we rank the plans in terms of the fees that you're paid and the ease of use and the clients that come to you that need that insurer, and reduce one plan at a time. Do it slowly, do it thoughtfully, and then at the very same time, increase your marketing. Okay, so it's a two-tiered plan where you're reducing insurance and you're increasing your marketing so that people can want to come to you. And usually, if you take someone's insurance, they want to use their insurance. So the only way that you're going to build a big out-of-pocket or fee-for-service practice is if you're not taking any insurance or just a very few insurances.
And with the marketing, this is the other sort of just going back to honing in on your niche, because I'm on a lot of referral sites. And so it does help with the flow, because I'm specifically on the sites where I know this is the population I want to work with. And so they will find me there, and it keeps I'm not just getting people from all over the place, and I get a lot of word of mouth referrals. But that's why it's also important to know, yes, I have the Psychology Today, which is sort of, anyone is going to look there. But then I also have very niche referral sites that I use that I get a lot of my clients from.
Another way that you can do some niche marketing is through podcasts, right? So I'm sure everyone knows that, over the pandemic, podcasts have really blown up. And so podcasts are a great way for you to, center yourself as a thought leader in your niche. And then for people that are looking for that kind of, content to interact with you as well. So I also encourage clients, yes, use those websites. They're great, the different directories, and also pitch yourself to podcasts. It can be a simple email, put a little blurb about yourself, or how you think you can provide value to their podcast. And you'd be surprised the amount of people that will respond back to you and say, sure, we would love to have you as a guest. And then you're able to go on there and be that subject matter expert. And that also helps with your SEO on your website as well.
Search engine optimization. One of the other types of ways to price I've seen is definitely the sliding scale or taking insurance, but also having this tiered of where if people can pay more, like your pricing. And then if someone could pay more, they pay more, which will help the people who can't pay more cover their costs. And that way it's a little bit, if people have more money and they can give, or they want to help other people, they can do that too in your practice. So I've seen that work as well.
Could I speak to that just for a moment? We live in a really litigious society. And my hope is if you're going to do financial things with your fees, that you look at what the norms are in terms of our profession. And I'm not even a big fan of sliding scale, because I don't feel like we get the training to be able to assess somebody's income, to know really how to do that very well. And I know that some clinicians will slide their scale, and then the client comes in a few months later and talks about this wonderful lavish vacation they're getting ready to take to Greece. And the person feels, well, that's not right, or that's not fair, I'm giving you a discount. But the truth is that people will spend their money on what they feel is valuable and important. So my preference is that you think about your criteria for setting fees. It's something like this, that you look at what is your philosophy of service? What are you trying to do with your practice? And then what is your business plan and your goals? And then what is the market like? And what is the perceived value of the skill that you offer? If you're offering something very special, you're going to be able to set a higher fee than if it's a more generalized practice. And then maybe also, what's your timeline to fill the practice? Do you need to fill it very quickly? And with all of those things, you could start to think about how to set a really good fee, including that you can discount some of your fees if you want to, the way that Victoria said. Maybe I talked with therapists at one time who said, you know, my 2 o'clock session never fills. So I offer that as a discounted session. Every day, 2 o'clock is a discount. And when those 5 sessions a week fill, then I just put people on a waiting list who need a discounted fee. Okay, and that could be a way that you could make a case for that. But I don't want you to set fees. If you're setting fees outside of insurance, I don't want you to set fees based on guilt or fear or anxiety, or, you know, somehow trying to justify who you are, like my friend charges this, so I better charge that too. Instead, I want you to go back to that criteria about the philosophy of service. And especially, I don't want you to think that what you're selling is love or caring. Okay, so if somebody says to you, you know, you say you really care about me, but if I couldn't pay your fee, you wouldn't see me. The answer, the correct, I feel like the ethical answer to that is correct. This is a business, and maybe this is not the best way to provide healthcare, but this is how we do it in this country. And I'm not selling caring, I'm selling skills, and the caring is free. You can't pay me for that. I have a way of caring about my clients. It's part of what I've learned to do, but that's not what you're paying for. You're paying for our skills. And maybe this is also a little bit different than other people think, but once you get your LCSC, I feel like you have the skills to work with almost anyone, because you know how to listen. You know how to listen empathically without judgment. You know how to ask good questions. You know how to sit with someone's pain or other difficult feelings. Those are tremendous skills that we have, that people value and want to pay for. So even though you may have layers of expertise and training, and I'm sure we all do, those basic skills that got you your MSW are really valuable, and they're rare in our society. So that's just my little pitch for us as clinical social workers.
No, I love what you just said, Lynn, and I want to tie that back to something that you said, Shantae, about ethics, because knowing your philosophy, how you want to practice is so key. And for my business and for my sliding scale, I have a minimum. And so I don't just, you know, if people can't make that minimum, you got to at least start there. But also, because we have a code of ethics, we have some room in there as well. So I've also done a barter with clients. I don't do them with all clients. And obviously, because I have a code, when it was brought to my attention, hey, would you be interested in doing that? I was like, I don't know if I can. I went to the code and it listed sort of how to do it if it's something that, you know, if the client brings it up. And so to your point, Shantae, about the social justice, that was important to me because I'm like, I'm a social worker first. And so I got to abide by this. But it made it possible for that particular client who did not have insurance, right? So that wasn't even an option, but they knew that they had something that they could give. And it just worked out for that particular client. And so I think to Lynn's point of knowing your own philosophy and getting comfortable with how you want to practice, what's important, being able to stick to the code of ethics to do what's right, not just for you, but also for the profession, is so key when it comes to navigating the rates, the types of clients. It just helps you knowing that I could go to the code to say, yes, this is okay, and here's how I need to do it, made me feel at ease. And it also made me feel like, yes, this is my part, because social justice is still important. And so it allowed me to do that as a social worker. And I think other professions may not necessarily have that the way that we do.
No, that's good. That's good.
Really good point.
Mhm. So this question is interesting. Lynn, do you have a group practice?
Do I?
Yeah. Do
No,
you?
not anymore.
And Victoria, you partner, but is it a group? It's just
I worked with a group practice,
with
but
a group.
I don't have a group practice.
Okay, so this is a question. How can you manage working as a 1099 contractor in a private practice while opening your own part-time? What are the limits, legal barriers, if any? So I have a lot of thoughts about this, but I'm gonna leave it.
Yeah, you have to look at the contract that you have with that practice. Some of them have a non-compete clause. And from experience of working with a lot of therapists, you have to be careful about what you've agreed to, because people are litigious and you can be sued. So fortunately, there are other things that you might need to do as you wait out that non-compete clause, or other ways of working now that we can work at a distance. You know, there's certainly maybe ways to live with that and still expand your offerings and your services.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is check your contract, because I echo what Lynn said.
And I also think it's about respect too, and being open and communicating what you want to do, because we've been talking about everything that we're doing is business. And what Lynn said is that we're selling skills. And so knowing that that person has, if you're working for someone, they have built their practice. And so to come in and then try to build yours on the back of theirs if you're not letting them know, it's just not being respectful of your colleague. I even for me, working at the university and doing continual ed, I don't know how many times I get people to call me, say, can you help me just grow my continual ed part? And I'm like, that is consultation or coaching. I am not doing that for free. Yes, we're social workers and we give, but that's a skill that I have that I'm just not going to just give away to just anybody without some compensation. So just being mindful of people's time and their skill level and what they know is important. So I've seen this come up a couple of times about group practice. So I just don't want the audience to get mad at me for not asking about this. And I also want to couple this with scaling, Alyssa, because I know a lot of times people go from seeing individuals to then scaling up to doing groups and doing other things. I guess some people may want to start off with group practice, but can we talk about group practice and then also talk about scaling?
I guess I'll start from the marketing perspective, but I think that a lot of our clients, right, they come to us, they're solopreneurs, and then they grow to a group practice, or even if they're expanding their services and they want to venture to group therapy. I think one of the biggest things you want to consider, again, is how that impacts your messaging so that you can continue to attract the right people. And also understanding your ideal client profile and what are their values, right? So for example, if you know that your clientele only want to work with you, or they only want to be in individual therapy, then you may have to pivot how you even market your group, because that may not even be the same client archetype that wants to get one-on-one therapy versus group therapy. Or if you are pivoting and you're going to grow a group practice, then you also want to consider, okay, how are you showcasing your company culture? Right? Because now you're shifting from being a solopreneur and it's all about you and you're the face of the brand, right, to creating a sense of community. And I think sometimes as solopreneurs that transition into more of a group model, we forget that it's not just us hiring contractors and they're just, helping us grow ourselves. This is a community. This is, you have to think with we in mind and not with I in mind. And there definitely is a shift. That's also another time where I see a lot of people do a rebrand. That's a great opportunity or they may even have a new brand. They may say, you know what, this is my personal brand for the work that I do as a speaker, as a consultant, as a social worker. And now that I'm doing a group practice, this is going to be how I'm going to position that leg of my brand as well. So I just encourage everyone to think about how are you going to cultivate that sense of culture even before you start doing the marketing, right? Because you also want to make sure that you are attracting clinicians that are going to be in alignment with your values and your approach and the way that you want your clients to feel. Because even though you may not be seeing that client, they're still, going to your practice. That experience is going to be a reflection of you, even if you're not seeing them.
Yeah, that's a great point. I would just say I don't have a group practice, but I did consultation, I did supervision with a group practice. And I'm now connected with a lot of coaches. And my recommendation would be to get with someone. I don't know, Lynn, if you do coaching around starting a group practice, but I know there are coaches out there that specifically work with therapists who want to start a group practice, because everything that we said is expanded, right? Because now you got to get into the benefits and, like you said, the legal stuff. Like there's so much more business to the business that there are coaches out there who will specifically walk you through that process. And having worked with a group practice, I know that it takes a lot to get all of those ducks in a row and to have the right support, because what I found is that it's another one of those areas where you can't just do it by yourself. Like you need to know what other staff you also need to hire to do the admin, to do the intakes, to do all the things. And so my recommendation would be to link up with the coach who can help you walk through the process and know how to set it up.
Yeah, and I do a lot of coaching of people who've started group practices, big and small. So you're going to need administrative help, like Victoria says, absolutely. And you're going to need to be a boss of other people. And some therapists don't like that. It's a different skill set. It's a different positioning. And it's like you can't be friends with your employees. It's just different. And I've talked with a lot of therapists in group practices who have a mindset where they realize we've built community, like Alyssa said, but it's a community that may be leaving me at their own discretion. And I have to be okay with that. I have to make sure, like Shante said, how can we make this transparent and open? So if people come in and they're only coming for a short time, how do I make that okay with me? And still make it a win-win for everybody. So it's different skills, but it's very lucrative. And the therapists that I've worked with who have $1 million practices, it's because they're group practices. Okay.
So this is the group practice is great, but I went group practice route, but they were really talking about group therapy. How do you?
Group therapy.
So that was on me.
Okay, so let me just say one thing, because I used to run groups continually, and I know a lot of therapists that love groups, and groups are wonderful, but they find it difficult to get people into group. So that's where, like Alyssa talked about, you would want to be marketing for people who want groups. And in our culture, a lot of people aren't comfortable with groups. and the topics that they're coming in to talk about. Unless they've been in like a 12-step program, they may not be very comfortable. So you have to do a lot of different kind of marketing and helping people understand why this would be a benefit for them.
I think also sometimes you want to your point about experimenting with the different kinds of marketing, I even find that you may need to go a little grassroots. You may need to reach out to different community organizations and nonprofits that have the people that you think would benefit from that group. And use that as a resource or even as an example. Maybe that's a free session that you do, or maybe it's a discount that you give, and so to speak, to kind of cultivate that sense of community. I find during the pandemic, a lot of our clients were not seeing a lot of buy-in virtually for groups, right? And that makes sense, right? It was a pandemic happening, so things were shifting. But now that the way that we do business has changed, everyone's online. Even when it comes to the online space, there are definitely ways to do that, but you do have to think outside of the box sometimes, or just kind of give people you really want to just showcase the value add, right? And then be creative. Maybe that's an incentive. Can you say, okay, well, if you refer someone else to the group, then maybe that person gets something off, or maybe they get a one-on-one with you, or maybe they get some of those marketing collateral, like we talked about, some of those free downloads or those products, right? Or some kind of welcome box. I also think that sometimes with group therapy, you really have to lean into client experience. So typically with one-on-one therapy, right, if it's telehealth or even if it's in person, you're seeing that service provider, and that's kind of it, right? You log on, you log off, that's the end of it. When it's a group, to kind of get them to buy in, I tell clients, think about a welcome box. Is that a t-shirt? Do you need to brand the group? Do they need to feel like they're really a part of this sense of community, that it's a badge of honor for them to be in community with the other people that are in that group with them? Whether that's a customized journal or something of that nature, those different trinkets and items help people feel like they're buying into the greater vision of the group as well.
That's so nice. I had not really thought about that, Alyssa, but that's a really lovely way to extend to people in group.
It is.
So we're actually going a little bit back to when we were talking about opening up. Your license is not even dry yet and people want to open, and we have people asking, forget the LCSWC, can we start a practice at the LM level and with supervision? Any thoughts about that?
If you're a part of a group practice, yes, but if it's going solo, no, because the C gives you the independence. The LM, in order to do all the other things, I actually looked into this with someone that I was supervising, who, just like you just said, Shante, was like, itching to just go solo. And the regs just didn't allow for it.
Yeah, and those have changed. When I started, back in '88, you could, but not now.
So you can't, because when you have an M, you need supervision. So even if you just had like a person that was supervising the work you're doing, you still can't start a private practice. Okay.
Nope.
Good to know, good to know. So someone is asking about submitting claims, but I think that they may need a little bit more specific. That's a really specific. Let me see another question. Oh, this one. Do you recommend using your home as your office space?
So I have always had a home office, but at the same time, I've always had an outside office too.
Mm.
And now with Zoom, of course, many of us can have a home office, but you have to really be careful about the screening that you do. I remember years ago when I had a home office, and I had a client that was referred by a friend of mine, a colleague of mine, who came in, and at the first session, she said to me, everything we talk about is confidential, right? And I said, right. And she said, good, because I'm getting ready to do some damage to my previous therapist because I'm mad at her. First was coming to my home. So I thought, wow, I'm going to have to put special locks on the doors now to be keyed in. It was a problem. And it really was a wake-up call for me, because even with a good referral, it was like, you don't always know who's coming to your house. So one of the ways I think that we've protected ourselves with the kinds of clients that we may be seeing is to have more of a blank screen, to have an outside office where at least we can get to know the client before then making it an option. But like other people, I have enjoyed having a home office. I've just had to be very careful and selective. What about you, Victoria? Have you done that?
I haven't seen in person in my home.
Okay.
I've only done the virtual in my home. And even with my other services, I had thought about having them because of the way my house is set up. They wouldn't be in the main area, but I decided against that too, that like I have my office space. If I'm doing any kind of in-person work, it's at the office space where there's, because I don't, yes, like you said, I don't want anybody stalking me
No.
later or,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now with Zoom, I find that, and I don't hear a lot of people talking about this, but I've found in my psychotherapy practice that there's some real advantages to working on Zoom at a distance that I don't always hear talked about. That when people were coming into my office, sometimes it was like there was a power differential because they were coming into my space. And now we're in this kind of in between space where it's not mine, it's not theirs. We're meeting somewhere in the middle. And I get to see sometimes a more vulnerable and different side of people being in their own comfort place.
Yeah.
And
100%.
I feel like I've seen it with couples that I've worked with, and sometimes with families and with individuals. So I do think this has been a real good thing in certain ways for our profession, is to be able to have this available.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Sometimes it feels like a home visit because they are more relaxed. And so
Yeah.
you do get to see some dynamics that you wouldn't necessarily see in the office.
That's a great point.
So we have just a few minutes left, and I wanted to get to this area. We talked about like having your brand reflect who you are and, your full self, and, you don't have to kind of, when you work a 9 to 5, sometimes you got to kind of keep a little bit of yourself at home. But how do you do that when you're struggling with imposter syndrome, or the thought of starting your own business really means putting yourself out there, and maybe you're a little private or a little shy, or you're not even sure how you fit in. How do you deal with that?
The first thing you have to do is make up in your mind that you're not going to create an environment where you have to shrink, right? So a lot of times we work in different environments where we feel like we have to minimize who we are. So if you're starting your own business, this is definitely not the place for that. I also encourage clients to think about where they see themselves and what does that kind of woman have to be to get to that point? Because sometimes when we're in the current space, we still have a lot of those practices and a lot of that mindset that we had working for someone else. And we were, mobilizing ourselves around their vision, which isn't an issue, but it's their vision. We have to get clear on our vision, how we want to show up, what is our zone of purpose before we can show up authentically. I also think there's a very, very fine line between showing up authentic and showing up in a way that's raw, right? And what I mean by that is who you are as a business owner. Some people say, oh, it's a facade. I don't think it's a facade, but right, you want to represent yourself in the best light. That doesn't mean that you're not being authentic. That just means that you're positioning yourself in the best light. So even down to messaging, right? When you look on someone's website, typically they have their bio and it just talks about where they went to school and, that kind of thing. I typically tell clients, let's dig a little deeper. Let's talk about your passion for social work, right? Let's get a little bit more vulnerable, but that doesn't mean telling all your business and your deepest, darkest secrets, but it does mean kind of peeling back those layers. And that's one of those ways where you're going to be able to bring in those right people that have some synergy between your experience and their experience. So I say all that to say that being authentic, first starts with being confident in who you are, knowing who you are, and then also understanding that you can have boundaries between your personal life and your personal brand, right? Your personal brand is not your personal life. And I think in this world of social media, sometimes those lines can be a little blurred.
I want to add to that because I'm going to take it in a slightly different direction, because part of my personal life is part of my brand, because I work with my niche population are women who come out later in life. And I wrote a book about my journey of coming out later in life. And that's part of my marketing. And so I generally get clients who are looking for me. They're looking for somebody who understands this journey, somebody who understands this struggle. And so because I work with folks who are really heavily looking for that identity part, I did struggle in the first few months of starting my practice of me sitting there thinking, why are you talking to me about this? Like, you really want to know this from me? But then I had to remind myself, okay, I wrote a book. Like, I have personal experience and I have skills and I have knowledge, and I've been doing this for a long time. And so, yes, they are, to Lynn's point, they're not here for my love and affection. They're here for my knowledge and skills and my understanding of their struggle and their journey. And so I have had to work on getting clear with the fact that, like, because of the clients that I work with, you know, I may talk to them in a slightly informal way that maybe we didn't learn that in our theory class. Maybe we learned it in a very sort of do this 1, 2, 3 way. And the work that I'm doing may not look exactly like what it said in the book, but I'm informed by what it said in the book. And that comes with time and experience, to get over that imposter syndrome and to allow yourself to relax into your own style and how you incorporate the theoretical framework that you use, right? And so to your point, Shantae, like, I don't use every single theoretical framework that's out there. I really enjoy a few. These are the ones that work for the clients that I work with. And that's what I really feel like I've become an expert in. And so that allows me to then relax and then get comfortable with sort of so then I can show up authentically, because I'm not in my head thinking about, oh, am I doing this right? Is this the right model? Is this the thing? Da, da, da. No, I can relax knowing that, like, yes, these are the clients that I want to see. I know I have knowledge and skills and experience to share with them. And then I can just I can then be myself in that professional way.
I love that you're also talking about the element of storytelling, right? So I help clients identify what is your vulnerable story and what are you okay with sharing? Because sometimes when we don't identify that, right, we can overshare a little bit.
Absolutely.
And to your point about writing your book and how that brought you closer to your zone of purpose, closer to your ideal client, that really is the power of great messaging. It's going to bring you closer to where you need to be. And it's going to kind of push away the people that are not in alignment with the services that you want to provide.
That's
And
right.
by you being able to lean into your story, right, you're being authentic without oversharing, but you're also encouraging your clients to also go on that journey as well into, you know, that self-discovery and just coming into that space of self-acceptance. So that's
Yeah, 100%. 100%. You're really good at, like, this marketing thing. You might want to consider that. You're really good at, like, packaging all of that. That was really beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for just sharing your story. I mean, like I said, that is exactly what it looks like. Everyone, this is the best example on the call today of what it means to show up authentically in your business, right? You shared that powerful story without minimizing who you are or oversharing. And you're also being able to identify who your ideal client is without saying it, right?
Yeah.
Your ideal client shouldn't sound like, you know, my name is Alyssa Jones and this is what I do, but based on the impact and the outcome is how you're able to identify that.
Yeah. Yeah, which is why I think it's so important, when we're writing bios for these different directories and referral sites. You know, I find that if you write a really good bio, it's rare that I have to do a consultation. Like, I do some, but most of the time, clients, once they read the bio, they connect. And 9 times out of 10, they're the right fit.
I agree.
Wow.
Copy is everything. That's what's up.
Let me just say, I'm full. I feel I could keep going, but we have passed time. I'm going to turn this over to Krishna, and we will follow up with this one.
Yes, thank
Thank you,
you all.
ladies.
This has been amazing. I'm not even a social worker, but all of the nuggets that I got, I'm trying to figure out how can I apply it to what I do. But no, I really appreciate Lynn, Alyssa, Victoria. You have been nothing short of amazing. All of the nuggets you all shared today. Shantae, also, you slipped some nuggets in there too from your own personal experience. And so I think our alums really, really, truly, I know they appreciate this. These are the kind of things we want to continue to bring to our alums who are out here looking to do private practice. And this is something that has been on request for some time. So I really thank you. And I want our alums to know that I will be sending out everyone's contact information. You'll get an email from me, a follow-up email along with a survey. But I just want to thank you all again. This has been amazing. So kudos to all of your expertise and the work you do in this space. So I want to thank you for that. And I told them, I've already shared with them alums that I'm bringing them back for part 2. I don't know what the part 2 is going to be. It's going to dive a little deeper into something about this. But I think it looks like from the comments in the chat that everyone will be back for part 2. So thank you all. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. I hope to see you all for our next critical convo, which will be on March 28th, same at 12 o'clock. And that is where we'll be talking about leadership and nonprofit management. So
I feel like I'm hosting a podcast, so I want to drop your handles for those people that's going to watch this back. Make sure you go ahead and say where people can find you.
They can find me online. My website is innertruthllc.com. They can also find me on Instagram at innertruth LLC on Instagram and on Facebook at Victoria D. Stubbs.
And I'm at privatepracticesuccess.com.
They can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and on my website at AlyssaPenaDesignStudio.com. And it's Pena like Pina Colada. So
I love that. That's marketing for you. So thank you all again. And I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day. And this is recorded. So if you need to play it back, it will be posted on our website. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
All right.
Bye.